What should you know if you're going to be interviewed for a podcast remotely? Podcasts are an archived medium, so even if the show that you are being interviewed for is just a small one, remember that a resulting episode will remain on the internet for a very long time, possibly indefinitely. And this means that over time, you might accrue thousands of listeners. And you want your listeners to remember you for the quality of the content and not for the bad quality of the sound. My name is Dennis Eckmeyer. I'm a neuroscientist, but I also have a podcast for my science advocacy project, Science for Progress. And in this video, I will give you three major categories of how you can improve the recording quality for your podcast. First, you reduce the surrounding noise in the environment. Second, you increase the quality of your own voice. And third, you avoid quality loss through the transmission through the internet. And in the next video, I will give you a quick tutorial on how to record your own voice with a free, simple to use program called Audacity. But before we jump in, I want you to consider something that a lot of people seem to forget. If you're a professional and you are being interviewed in your capacity as an expert, then your employer might have an interest in helping you in your outreach efforts. This means that you should not be afraid to ask your employer whether there is audiovisual equipment or even an audiovisual team that can help you with the recordings. But it could also be as simple as just providing you with a room that is quiet. Okay, so now let's move on to the tutorial. Category 1 is to remove all annoying sounds from the environment. And the first and simplest and most important tip is to use headphones. The reason why you should be, in every case, be wearing headphones while you're recorded for a podcast interview is because there are other participants in the podcast, including your host. And in order to get a clean recording of just your voice, you want to avoid the sound of these other participants to reach the microphone. So the more isolated the headphones are, the better. And also, you want to make sure that you do not turn up the volume too much, because even these headphones, which are pretty good, I think, if I turn up the sound too much, I get the voice of the other participant in my own recording. And second, turn off all devices in the room, including the system sounds of your computer and your cell phone. This includes vibration mode on your phone. In fact, it's best to turn everything off that could cause a distraction because you're getting a message or something, or an alarm goes off. You want to avoid these things. They're really hard to deal with in post-production. They can also be very distracting if you're in the middle of a thought, and you might end up having to say the same thing over and over again, or they decide to just cut it out, which might be a bummer, or they could decide to leave it in, and that sounds really unprofessional. Other things that you should be aware of that you often forget because you're probably recording in a room that you are in very often and then you don't notice anymore. But if there is a fan, for example, from the AC, or there's a fridge in the background, turn these things off too, or choose a different room. You do not schedule the interview during times when that room is quite busy. This is also for outside problems. For example, I'm living right next to a construction site. They're actually building right now, so maybe I didn't choose the schedule right. So you should really try to schedule your recording at a time when the surrounding is usually quiet. In my case, it would have probably been better to record in the evening, but I decided to do it today and during the morning simply because they're not so loud today. So that was a spontaneous decision. But if I had to schedule a recording, I would definitely avoid to do it while our neighbors are rebuilding their house. Use an immobile, non-squeaking chair. That's also something you probably don't realize because you're used to your favorite chair and you're used to just move around while you're talking. And really, if you do that during a podcast recording, you will hit the table with the chair at some point or something else. And the squeaky chair is just annoying anyways. So just try find a chair that is comfortable, that cannot move around, and that does not squeak. Related to the habit of moving around while you're talking is the problem of not to touch your microphone. If you move around a lot and you have a static microphone like the one I have here and you cannot really see it because it's just at the lower edge of the video, you might move against it. Or if you're using a headphone like this, that is a smartphone headset, then the problem is that you have it in your ears like this, and then it's dangling around here, and if there's anything that it can dangle against, it probably will, and that causes odd noises. And that's not just things around you, but also things that you yourself are wearing. For example, a necklace or the buttons on a shirt. These can all touch the microphone, and then you have odd noises. And I just touched my microphone on a shirt. So maybe there's a teachable moment here. And finally, some people also play with this microphone because it's something that, some people get nervous and then they play with that. You definitely want to avoid that. While you're preparing for this, make sure you're aware of this problem and try to set everything up in a way that this doesn't happen. The second major thing to think about is how to improve the quality of your own voice. And to cut it short, the best thing you can do as somebody who is not a professional voice recording person is to use a headset. And this is for two reasons. The first one is consistency of the sound of your voice. Just imagine I have a fixed microphone right here, right now. And let's say I'm sitting down and I'm moving back and forth with my chair like this and like that. I hope this works and you will recognize that there is a sound quality issue when I move away from the microphone. Professionals know how to keep their mouth in the right distance of the microphone over prolonged time, and they also know how to move away and towards the microphone when they're whispering or laughing or being very excited and the loudness of their voice changes. But if you're not a professional, and that's what I'm assuming for this video, you want it simple and easy and more or less foolproof. And this is done with a headset like this, where the microphone is pretty much in the exact same distance to the mouth during the whole recording. The second thing is that the microphone is relatively close to your voice. And this is important because you want a high so-called signal to noise ratio in your recording, which means you want the sound of your voice to be much louder than, for example, echoes that are coming from the walls. And this is achieved by just being relatively close to the microphone. And as a non-professional, you will also achieve this most easily by simply using a headset. Speaking of echoes, another problem or another way to improve the quality of your recording is to choose a room that doesn't actually produce a lot of echoes. And this you can achieve by choosing a room that does not have a high ceiling like my room and does not have a lot of naked walls like my room. So basically I chose the worst example. So if you want to look around, I have high ceiling and I have a lot of naked walls. This is actually not good for the recording. The more things you have on the walls that swallow sound rather than reflecting it, the better. And a smaller room does not create as much echoes as well. And then there's two more things how you can improve the sound of your voice directly. and one of them is to avoid dry mouth. So, just before you're going into the interview, and when the podcaster is talking, you can have a sip. A lot of people get dry mouth simply because they're a little bit nervous, and this is completely understandable. The problem is that when you talk with a dry mouth, you produce these weird mouth sounds that might be great for ASMR, but they do not work in a podcast recording. You really want to avoid that. A second thing that you could do is to warm up your voice. If you remember, when you wake up in the morning, your voice is kind of deep and maybe a little bit crackly, and that's because you're not warmed up to talk. So in order to avoid your voice to change over time during the interview, because you're talking and you're warming up, you want to warm up beforehand. And you can do that by very simple means. You could read something aloud. You can have a conversation with a friend. Or you can just talk to yourself. Whatever works for you. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Like a singer, or an anchor, or an actor. And the final point is to avoid quality loss through the transmission by the internet. There can be lags that can cause the sound to become weird or even break up for a bit. And in order to avoid having to repeat yourself over and over until you get a clean recording, you can just simply record the voice on your side locally. And then you send the file to your podcaster through a transmission service directly. In the next video, I will explain how to record your own voice with a simple to use and free program called Audacity. Not a sponsor. Another advantage of having your own recording is to, well, have a record. So you really know what you said yourself, and you can compare that to the outcome in the final episode. Sometimes podcasters will recut everything you said, put it into a new sequence in an effort to make the message more clear. You might want to double check if the final outcome really is what you said during the interview. Another way to achieve that is to use the recording function of the communication service that you use on the internet. For example, Skype allows you to record the video and the sound together, and at the end of the conversation there is a link that will be there for 30 days and you can download the whole conversation. So you should definitely consider doing that. Let me just quickly recapitulate what I talked about in this video. Choose a headset and you're pretty much good for most occasions. Turn off all devices. Make sure that you don't touch the microphone accidentally and that your chair does not squeak and that you can't move around too much on it so that you cause weird sounds. And finally, warm up your voice and make sure you have something to drink. And if you decide to go the extra mile and record your voice yourself locally, there will be another video where I explain to you how to do that. Now remember what I said in the beginning. If you are a professional and you are being interviewed in your capacity of an expert in your profession, then your employer probably wants to help you out with your outreach, and you should ask them whether you can borrow equipment or if they have an audiovisual team that can support you while you're recording, or simply provide a good room for the interview. Now, if you want a checklist, I will provide a link to my own website in the description box below. Please like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Have a good day.